Morning, everyone. I think Claire, our chair, may be having some technical issues, so sorry about that, but thanks everyone for joining today's session with the Supply Chain Sustainability School. So we've got a really good agenda coming up today with a wide range of speakers, so it's quite a packed agenda, so we're going to get started soon, and we're going to start off with a Mentimeter poll. So Mentimeter is a polling device for Q&A. So if you could open up on your browser, www.menti.com on your phone works best, and then enter the code that you can see there. Don't disconnect from here. You'll still need to hear us speaking, but you can enter your answers on there. So the first question we're going to ask is, what are the first three words you think of when you hear the term social value? So if you enter that code, you'll see it on the screen shortly. So hopefully you can now see the code at the top. I just put it in the chat box as well. So good to see some answers coming in there. I'll give you a few moments to put those in.
I think we're still waiting for our chair to join. Sorry about that, everyone. But really good to see the range of words that are coming in here. So community. So the words that appear the biggest are the ones that we get the most popular. I can see, yes, lots around community, people, lots around those kind of social elements of sustainability. I'm trying to see if there's anything there on the environmental side yet. It's quite difficult to follow. People, support, responsibility, young people, positive legacy. This is brilliant. We've got lots and lots of ideas here.
Yeah, great. Thanks everyone for sharing those, and we can share that after. Seems like Claire can hear us, but we can't hear her, unfortunately.
Okay, should we move to the next poll then?
So yeah, next up we've got Sophia Cox from UKGBC with a presentation. So I will pass over to her, and hopefully in the meantime we can get Claire on the line.
Hello everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I am Sophia Cox. I lead the social value programme at UKGBC, and I'm going to be giving a presentation on the work that we've been doing with our task group to define social value for the built environment sector, and the resulting framework which we have recently launched. This is all the people who've been involved in that task group. It's quite an extensive group of people. I think that was really important for us when looking at the challenge of defining social value for the sector. It had to be built on a wide range of perspectives, and quite a diverse group as well. So within this group, we have sort of the traditional representation of organisations from across the value chain, but also we have quite a high number of what we call industry supporters. So those are organisations like the Supply Chain and Sustainability School who have their own networks, but are kind of critically important for this bit of work, both from kind of their own insights, but also their reach. And the idea was really to make something that was sort of bigger than UKGBC. So together over the past 9 months or so, we have been on quite a rigorous consensus building exercise, and that included last year a consultation, an industry consultation, actually the biggest of its kind that UKGBC has ever run. So from that we were kind of able to distill down some key information that's helped form the framework. I should say, we started this process with what we felt was a sort of very strong mandate from the industry that the sector needed a definition of social value that spoke to the impact that buildings, places, infrastructure have on the quality of life of people. Obviously, the challenge with that is the sheer diversity of different project types that we have within our sector. So the solution that we have and what we've recently published is our framework for defining social value, which, sorry, just go back one slide, which includes, yes, a high level descriptive definition of social value that works for the built environment, but I think more importantly includes a process or outlines a process for defining social value on any built environment project. And we've supplemented that as well with what we've called principles for delivering social value, but equally might have been called sort of characteristics for recognising best practice social value delivery, and then a high level process for delivering social value that works for any stage of the asset life cycle for any asset type. So kind of going through some of those bits in turn, starting out with defining social value. Social value, as I'm sure you're all aware, is a bit of a strange concept to come across for newcomers because it's almost quite deceptive in the sense that it hides the fact that social value encompasses environmental, economic and social well-being, but critically understands all of those factors in terms of how they benefit people and how they improve quality of life. I think the second sort of aha moment that you get with social value is understanding how different it can look in different contexts, and that's because how it looks will depend hugely on who the people are who are being impacted and what their needs are and what their best interests are. So therefore, in the context of the built environment, we see social value is created when buildings, places and infrastructure support environmental, economic and social well-being, and in so doing, improve the quality of life of people. And exactly which outcomes will create social value will depend on who the people impacted by that built environment project are, and that actually you should be defining those outcomes. Practitioners, project teams should be defining those outcomes and who the people are for each project they undertake, and that's really the kind of core of the framework that we've produced. So here we have an example of how that definition of social value might be articulated. We're not suggesting here that everyone sort of use this diagram. This is merely to kind of illustrate the point that you might arrive on sort of these 5 outcomes as being particularly important for a different project. And you can see each of the outcomes, be they a social outcome like new public spaces or an economic outcome like workers with fair wages, impacts different levels of stakeholder. So some of them might be particularly important to the local community, some might be particularly important to the supply chain or the wider town or city or global society. I should say, obviously, the focus, and hopefully the diagram conveys this, should be on the local community and the supply chain. But for different projects, it might be that wider stakeholder groups are more relevant. So yeah, that's the kind of illustrate that idea. So how do we get to the point where we create a definition of social value for a built environment project? Well, the framework puts forward these 3 steps. Firstly, to identify who your stakeholders are. I should say that is no easy undertaking. Communities are notoriously hard to kind of pin down. But I would say this exercise isn't about going to sort of the minute detail of identifying particular households or individuals. It's about recognising who the kind of groups are, stakeholder groups who might have the same kind of interests for a particular project. And we provide much more guidance in the framework itself on kind of the steps that you can take to identify those stakeholders. The second step is to understand their best interests. Obviously, for the local community, this is about conducting a local needs analysis and if you can, ideally directly hearing from the local community what they think their best interests are. And then for wider supply chain stakeholders, it might be about conducting a risk analysis, for example, because it's not kind of appropriate to go to them directly. Step 3 is on the basis of who those stakeholders are, what their best interests are, to agree outcomes in a collaborative process with all parties, including, of course, the local community. And you can see on the diagram, we've got what we call a golden thread of community involvement that should be present throughout all 3 steps. As you can see, this is the first 3 steps of the wider framework for delivering social value in a built environment project that has been designed to be applicable at any stage of the asset lifecycle and for any asset type. Just to kind of take you through that on a high level. So once you have defined social value for your built environment project, it's about establishing the baseline, which is really important when you want to improve additionality, creating a strategy, putting in place a measurement framework, implementing those measures, and then monitoring in the long term, which is obviously really important because it's not clear exactly how these interventions are going to play out unless you measure in the long term. And then continuously improving from that monitoring is also a really important aspect. One of the last sort of key elements of the framework is the principles for delivering social values. I said before, these also might be kind of considered as characteristics of best practice social value approach. I've covered quite a lot of them, but just to take them each once in turn. First, the importance of context, obviously, for the built environment, that's about stage of asset life cycle, type of asset, and community, who the community are. The second is to take a place-based approach. There's lots of great work that happens and social value that is created through the corporate operations of organisations operating in the built environment, but the focus when we're looking at a strategy for a project should be the social value that can be delivered directly through that place. Thirdly, it's about taking an outcomes approach, particularly in measurement, so measuring the outcomes rather than the interventions that lead to those outcomes, and always thinking about the ultimate outcome, which is improvement in quality of life or improvement in well-being. Principle 4 is about collaboration. This should be about partners collaborating at each stage of the life cycle, but also collaborating across the life cycle so that ambition to deliver social value isn't lost in that process. And there was a point actually made at the launch event that it should be about collaborating across different projects and seeing how you can maximise the opportunity to deliver outcomes for the wider city, say, across different projects. Principle 5 is about process. Obviously, that's been kind of showing the importance of hitting different points in process rather than any particular outcome. And the last one, perhaps the most interesting one, is about additionality. Additionality is a sort of core component of the Social Value Act, and it's about going above and beyond business as usual. In this framework, we set out that we kind of interpret additionality as demonstrating that you have gone above and beyond the social value that was there before. So you have to make an assessment of the social value before an intervention and afterwards, and what you go over and above, that's your additional social value. And I think what's nice about this interpretation versus perhaps industry benchmarks or going above compliance or policy is that it forces you to do that, forces you to have an understanding of the social value that already exists. And to respect the fact that you're not kind of coming into a blank environment. These are just some kind of examples of how that might play out in practice. So if you think about a housing-led regeneration scheme, you need to appreciate sort of what the community values beforehand. And if you do have to redevelop things that are valued, it's about doing it in a way that kind of replaces that value with the equivalent. So those are sort of some of the key elements. It's the framework is live on our website. Please do go down and please do go and download it. It's got lots more stuff in there that I haven't had time to cover. For example, a map of sort of relevant social value policy. It kind of sets out the policy landscape for social value and how that influences a project. And please do also get in touch to be part of our ongoing work on this area, we're going to set up a forum for members who are wishing to align with the framework over the next 12 months or so, and that will be a kind of learning forum, but also an opportunity to refine the framework as it goes forward. And as always, we have lots of additional activities that we do sort of as part of our work, advocacy around social value policy, industry engagement, and other learning opportunities. So that's it from me.
I would just urge you, following Sophie's brilliant presentation, Sophia, I should say, please do check out the work that UKGBC has done and do get involved. And I'm going to pass over to Penny Anderson now from BAM Construct UK. And just a reminder, please, everybody, please do start to put your questions, if you have any questions as they come up, in the box so we can start to think about how we're going to run our Q&A. So over to you, Penny. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. So good morning, everybody. I just wanted to introduce myself. It's a bit of a confusing picture. When I first sort of started to get involved with this session, I was working at BAM Construct. I've now moved to Atkins, so I've kind of got both hats on. So I'll kind of explain that as we go along. So for me, one of the challenges that I found more recently, I guess, is understanding how we can work with our suppliers to add social value. I think we've got some quite well established practices with our subcontractors, but when it comes to working with our suppliers, you know, we've got some great examples of good practice, which you'll hear about today, but not so much around how we work, particularly with our bigger suppliers, but with suppliers of all sizes, because it's a bit less tangible than some of the work we do with our subcontractors. So that's a bit of the context of, you know, why we're here really. So as explained, I now work for Atkins, so I'm kind of coming at this from both viewpoints, of a main contractor and from Atkins as well. So just in terms of background, I've been at BAM for 13 years nearly. So I've kind of, you know, been working in the field of social value for most of that time, working with a main contractor, but working with lots of different clients across lots of different sectors, sort of gaining experience and understanding around the issues around social value. And within BAM, BAM have a strategy around enhancing lives. So I've worked really kind of, you know, that's been a main focus of my work, is understanding what enhancing lives actually means. And it's really closely aligned with what social value means, and really sort of delving into the detail of, you know, how do we enhance people's lives? Why are we enhancing people's lives? How can we do it in a way where we enhance their lives the most? You know, when we're really thinking about the impact we're having on people, and how can we do it in a way which involves everybody around the business, so everybody has something to give, and how can we help people to understand what they have to give and help them to give what they can. So as a main contractor, BAM have been involved in social value probably for around the last 10 years in some kind of purposeful way. We delivered social value before that, you know, most organisations did, but perhaps by accident rather than by design, whereas now it's a very conscious activity. So I just thought this slide represents probably the vast majority of medium to large, particularly construction projects around the UK, and some smaller ones as well, definitely. And this is quite a well-established relationship that goes on from client, whether that's public sector client or some private sector clients as well, are really keen on you know, on improving what we do in our local communities, through to our contractor and through to our subcontractors. So all of the main contractors that are on the call today and that are involved in delivering social value will know that without our subcontractors, you know, we can't achieve what we need to achieve in terms of things like this: apprenticeships, education, getting people into employment, and working with local communities. So that's kind of a bit about the context of, you know, that's that well-established relationship that we've got going on. But that's specifically with subcontractors who come onto site, who spend time on site, and who we're able to work with whilst they're on site to deliver some of these activities. However, when it comes to working with our suppliers, I don't think that we've got that well-established relationship yet. We've got some good examples, but we're not. It's not something we do as standard. And I just feel like as an industry, we are incredibly creative. We're incredibly talented. You know, there's some amazing people that work in this industry that do some mind-boggling things. But we don't always know what's going on from the supplier end in terms of the social value that we're delivering, in terms of how we're working with people, how they're working with people. And I think there's a real disconnect between what a supplier is doing and what a contractor is doing in some instances. And I think that's the challenge I see, is how do we bridge that gap between what suppliers are doing around working with communities and working with people and adding social value, and what contractors are doing and clients and subcontractors. How do we bring that all together in one place? And if we could use some of that talent that we have as an industry to sort of tackle some of the major challenges we've got in the world around, you know, climate change and coming out of COVID, some of the inequalities that we're going to face, and some of the employment challenges that we're going to really see as coming to light over the coming months. If we could use some of the skills that we already have in the industry to tackle some of those challenges, we could do amazing things. And that's kind of my call to action, I guess, for, you know, bringing everybody together to sort of have this session today. The business case is really clear and is getting clearer all the time. You know, it's been driven by central government through, as we've seen recently, the policy procurement notice, but it's driven from local government as well. You know, it's clear for local governments especially that they rely on businesses to support them in the challenges that we face. You know, they can't face them on their own. And we as businesses have a responsibility to help tackle some of those challenges together. So the business case is clear. I guess we have some questions to ask ourselves of why are we doing this as businesses ourselves. You know, it's important that we do it because our clients are saying it's important, the government's saying it's important, but what is it we want as businesses from this? You know, what do we want to be known for? What change do we want to see through doing this in the coming years? And finally, one of the things that I've really struggled with when talking to suppliers, I've had lots of conversations with suppliers around social value, and they've been great conversations, but they've not really led to action. So I think, you know, is something like having some conversation starters going to help us bridge the gaps between what's going on between the contractors and the clients and the suppliers, etc. You know, if we could ask some really good quality questions, would that help us get started on this? So questions like, you know, why is social value important to you as a business? Who benefits when you do something positive in the local community? As Sophia was saying, who are your community stakeholders? Who in your business has something to give, and what is that thing they have to give? What are the moments in your business operation when activities could be included to add social value? So identifying those points along the way where you could do something which would make a difference. What do you do already, and what would you like to change if there were no barriers? And how can you break down those barriers and make small steps towards changing and towards adding social value and creating a greater impact? So I hope that kind of sets the scene and kind of helps to explain, you know, what the challenge is and what we're trying to achieve through having this conversation today. So we can move on to the polls. Okay, so we're already on there, already answering these questions. So do you have any social value targets to meet? Yes, these are set by your customers. Yes, they're set by the organisation that you work for, or no, we don't have any. Okay, so I think people are still answering, but you know, I think it's roughly going to be around the same here. So Interesting that about 80% of the organisations, 80% of the responders have said that yes, they do have social value targets. And there's a sort of a fairly even split between those being set by customers or set by the organisation. I know on the poll you have to choose one or the other. So I guess there's probably some organisations who have client-driven targets and organisation-driven targets. So it's difficult to unpick that at the moment, but it's good to see that around about 80% are there. And we're on 18% of no social value targets to meet. So it'll be interesting to understand who that 18% are, and how you can, how we can sort of help you to think about setting some targets. So next question, which social value activities do you most struggle to support? So there's a long list here, and I believe you can tick more than one. I hope that's right, Sophie. So yeah, if you just sort of scroll through that list and just select the ones that you struggle to deliver the most. You can only select one. Trying to see what this says. Which is which? Okay, interesting that the top answers are around diversifying the workforce, and what's that one? Ensuring money is spent locally through a project. And then another one is around apprenticeships, I think that one says. Struggling to read the small print. Apprenticeship support to allow young people to progress into sustained apprenticeships. That is a really challenging target that a lot of us face. We know it's the right thing to do, and it's great to sort of see young people come through business, but it's quite hard sometimes to sort of find appropriate employment and sustainable employment for a young person. So yeah, that can be quite a challenge. Diversifying the workforce, huge challenge that we face, and as an industry, I think it's a particularly difficult challenge, but one that we need to embrace, and work on collectively. And attracts a much wider range of people into the workforce and keep them there and help them progress. Ensuring money is spent locally through a project was a high answer as well. That's quite interesting. And then is that one volunteering? I can't quite see. The last one, yes, volunteering. Okay, so obviously time could be a barrier there for some people. So next question, what barriers do you face to delivering social value? Pick your top two. So interesting that time and lack of budget seems to be the sort of clear ones that people are struggling with the most. I think that's probably represents. I think I'd have the same answers to that. Having the time to really dedicate to social value can be difficult. So finding ways to sort of embed it in your processes is absolutely key. And some of the work that Sophia has been talking about could help sort of to achieve that. And lack of budget is an interesting one, because sometimes we can deliver social value activities without a budget, but other times to make a real difference, a sustainable difference, budget is needed. Lack of knowledge is an interesting one, because actually that's one that we can challenge. We can provide training, particularly through the school, to help upskill people and help raise their knowledge levels. So yeah. Thank you very much. That's all from me. I'll hand over to I think it's Sue next. Sue and Alison. Thank you.
Sue and Alison, I'll let you take this straight on. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think some really good points there, and some great questions coming through in the chat as well. I think this is an area where there's some really there are some really valid tensions and some real sort of very real tensions between the drive to move things forward and some of those operational tensions around Sarah's question around SMEs and sort of the focus on apprenticeships, and how how the supply chain can get more involved, and perhaps that real call to action on main contractors to sort of pick up and run with this challenge of making sure that we are engaging on more than just price, and that we are putting our money where our mouth is on this agenda. So I'm Sue Pickerel, I'm the Group Community Investment Manager for Wates. We are also a main contractor. We are family owned. Social value's always been really important to the business. We have about a 1.6 billion turnover, just under 4,000 employees, and work primarily in the UK. And social value is very much at the heart of what we do. So we think that social value is really important, so that when we're delivering a project, we're not just delivering a great building or a great service, but we're also delivering for the community. So that for us, that creation of that legacy piece is really, really important. We want to make sure that the community benefits from the building or from the service as well as the client, and that's really important. We have a phrase that the Wates family often use about business being a force for good. So business done well being a force for good, and that's really central to how we operate at Wates. I think in terms of social value, perhaps 15, 20 years ago, this used to be seen as an agenda which was a sort of a nice to have, a sort of a fluffy add-on to to the real work of getting on and building a building or delivering a service, whereas that has now changed. Social value and the delivery of social value is very much front and centre. It's front and centre to how projects need to be delivered, and it's also much more front and centre to what we see coming through in tenders from our clients. So that expectation coming through from clients, as we've already heard, that sort of wider piece of the momentum on why this is all really important is definitely getting stronger and stronger. The expectations are getting bigger, and that need to make sure that it is a core part of how we deliver is very much there. Gone are the days where it's sort of you deliver the project and you do a couple of volunteering days on the side and sort of tick a box. This is very much about changing the processes of how we do business, how we build, how we source. It affects everything, and I think that that's really exciting. Certainly for someone working in this agenda, it really adds adds wind to our sails, if you like, of trying to move this forward and trying to make sure that we are creating opportunities for people. Last November, we launched our now award-winning social value strategy, Creating Opportunities, and this sort of reinforces each of our projects has a community investment plan, and we're looking at how we can make sure that social value is delivered in everything that we do. And we also have 3 key themes within our strategy. So these are to challenge inequality, inspire and educate young people, and to support and scale the social enterprise sector. I'm going to focus primarily on the third one of those today. Challenging inequality, just briefly, is about sort of inclusive employment and some of these things that we're hearing about, and about living wage, and inspiring and educating young people, echoing what my colleague previously at BAM was saying about sort of really supporting young people in that educational piece. But social enterprise for us is a really key way of delivering social value, and it's a really easy way, actually. And one of the things that I would love you to take away from today is that if you're going to change one thing tomorrow, have a think about this one, because it really is a simple swap that can have a really impactful it can be really impactful for social value delivery. So for those of you that are not aware, social enterprises are organisations that work commercially, if you like. They apply commercial strategies, but they do it to maximise the social and environmental well-being. So they're set up to deliver social value from the start. So like traditional businesses, they aim to make a profit, but they reinvest that profit to create a social purpose, so to change people's lives, to improve the environment. So just by trading with these organisations, they have a built-in mechanism for delivering social value. And that's what I think is so exciting about the social enterprise sector. So Wates has spent 30 million with social enterprises to date. We have a really strong commitment to this. We do it through target setting. So all of our businesses, our projects have targets around how much we want them to spend and engage with social enterprises. We also have a strong network of social enterprise champions through our business. And we've set up a social enterprise brokerage where we can identify organisations that we're interested to trade with, that we've done in partnership with Social Enterprise UK. And we're always looking for new social enterprise supply chain partners. We've even had a few examples of where commercial supply chain partners have set up social enterprise arms because they've really come on board with this agenda and they see the value in actually maybe employing young people that are furthest from the workforce, or that they want to make a difference themselves, perhaps employing ex-offenders, for example. So we're really keen to encourage both the sector and our supply chain to trade with social enterprises as a really simple way of improving what you do to deliver social value. I know that we've had a couple of people saying, you know, what can I do? We are, you know, budgets may be limited, there may be less scope to get involved in kind of organising your own widespread social value programme. But this is a really simple one. You can just swap out what you trade. So on our panel later, we've got Michelle York from Nuneaton Signs. So they produce signage. If you buy signage, you could choose to buy your signage through a social enterprise. Stationery, sort of office supplies, cleaning. There are all sorts of things, probably a much broader selection of categories than you might expect until you start looking into it, that you can just literally swap one product for another and be improving what your social value delivery is as a business, that actually is going to cost you either the same or potentially less in many instances, but you've got that added value. So it really is a win-win. In terms of our journey, then certainly the next 5 years I see as really important in terms of collaboration and in terms of both continuing that trade, but also really partnering with social enterprises to try and scale and grow and support that sector and those businesses. And also we've got a new spend target. So between 2020 and 2025, we've committed to spending a further 25 million with social enterprises, because by trading, we support the sector to grow and to scale. We've run cross-sector social enterprise events with many other contractors, and also working with Scape on a social enterprise working group, just as some examples there. And I'm going to hand over to Alison from Scape to tell you a little bit more about what Scape are doing in this agenda.
Thank you, Sue. As Sue mentioned, I'm Alison Ramsey. I'm the Social Value and Performance Manager for Scape. Since 2006, communities have benefited from projects delivered through Scape's frameworks, as together we've achieved some amazing social value outcomes. On this slide, I've selected some statistics relating to projects delivered since 2013, and these reflect our commitment to the local supply chain. But 3 years ago, inspired by Wates, we introduced a requirement to engage a social enterprise on projects delivered through our regional construction framework and then also in our civils framework. And we'll be developing this further in our future construction framework. Our ability to capture results for clients in this way has been central to our success in driving social value and really underlines the importance of a consistent approach to reporting. On Scape projects, our national and regional delivery partners use the national TOMs to calculate the social and local economic value added. Many of our partners build this into their subcontracts and the social value reporting requirements they agree with their supply chain partners. That said, it's important to focus on outcomes rather than just calculations. In 2020, we commissioned a report to tell our story from the perspective of the people and communities that really see the benefit. It's called Social Value More Than Metrics, and it can be found on our website. And I'm also happy to circulate to attendees following today's session. Collaboration is central to how we work as a public sector organisation and key to our focus on social value. As Sophie mentioned earlier, it means working with our immediate framework partners and also others in the sector to achieve a greater impact through our combined strength. Last year, we saw a great example of this when we launched Learning in Lockdown, which was a STEM-inspired week-long virtual work experience programme. Working with 43 industry-leading organisations, including the majority of our framework delivery partners, we engaged 2,000 pupils from 300 schools across the whole of the UK. The success of the programme has contributed to Scape's recognition in winning the Frameworks Award at the National Social Value Awards announced last week. It's also focused our thinking around the effectiveness of collaboration and has led to our new Scape Community Legacy programme, which will see nationwide community benefit activities delivered jointly and shared with clients across all Scape frameworks. We're also continuing to build on work we started with Wates and other partners pre-COVID, when we established the Scape Social Enterprise Working Group. The broad purpose of the group is to extend the social impact of the built environment sector by increasing supply chain spend with socially or environmentally purposed organisations. To achieve this, our first major project is to develop a new social enterprise database and procurement tool for the built environment sector. The development of this tool is currently out to tender, with details on Scape's website and on Contracts Finder if you're interested in making a submission. When it's completed, it will allow subcontractors and supply chain businesses to better sell their goods and services to the built environment sector. We recognise that many supply chain partners are not social enterprises, and we want this tool to be an opportunity for those of you at an earlier stage on the social value journey. Built into the tool, we have our own bronze to platinum social enterprise assessment standard, so we can recognise the nature of the organisation. So we're going to move on to our next poll. And we'd like to ask where you feel your business is on the social value journey. Do you consider your business to have a social purpose or mission, or does your business take opportunities to drive social change through the work you do? So the responses are either yes, our approach to social change is stated and understood. To some extent, it's informally understood. We can do it on an ad hoc basis, or no, we don't have a social purpose. So looking at the results coming in there, it seems to be the majority is to some extent it's informally understood within the business. I think what we would say from our experience, from our point of view, is that if you can develop a social value strategy, and it doesn't have to be some big glossy brochure that's 20 pages long, you know, just purely a one-pager, just so that you set out and state what your aims and objectives are, it makes it so much clearer for everybody working in your organisation and also other organisations that want to work with you. They can see what your aims and objectives are in this area, and everyone knows where they're coming from. And I think to develop a social value strategy, like I say, even if it's just a one-pager, it is definitely a benefit for everybody within your organisation and also people working with you.
Thank you so much, Alison and Sue as well. I think you've both done such a lovely job of breaking down some of those quite complex thoughts about social value and making it, you know, setting out some quite digestible actions. So I'm going to hand over now to John. John, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Alison. Some very positive points there to pick up on. So my name is John McGrath. I'm the Director for O'Neill and Brennan Construction. Obviously today I'm going to share with you all some insights into our company's journey and experience with the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and currently where we are at on our roadmap and action plan to where we need to get to. I'll just give a quick introduction to O'Neill and Brennan. Like I said, we'll give a timeline to our journey with the school. We've been engaged with the school since 2012, so we've a good chapter to go through. Our business case is very important for any, I suppose, construction supply chain member, is the business case for sustainability and social value. The challenges we incorporate or came across as an organisation, some real challenges, and particularly the past 12 months are probably the biggest example of these challenges. I'll just run through our roadmap, so our sustainability roadmap and agenda for the organisation. And within that, we have some key impact areas and our key influence areas that we want to roll out. So just an introduction to O'Neill and Brennan. We've been trading since 1990, it's just over 30 years. We have a group turnover across the UK and Ireland in excess of 100 million. Basically, we are a solutions provider for the construction industry. So we provide construction logistics and site services, trades and labour, professional and technical staff, and recently SIA security. I think on average a week we probably have about 2,500 staff members on site, and daily we probably have an influence on about 500 plus live daily sites. Throughout the year we probably accumulate about 6 million hours of working hours from that 2,500 staff members. Obviously we have 17 regional offices located throughout the UK and Ireland, so that just gives you a feel for, I suppose, the challenges we had in implementing the social value plan across the group. So our journey, we engaged with the Supply Chain Sustainability School back in 2012. We became gold members in 2013. At that point, our knowledge was probably limited within the group in terms of our direction that we wanted to go and the areas that we needed to implement and influence. We became a school partner in April 2017, and this led obviously to being early signatories of the People Matters Charter. This obviously helped evidence and led further to our ethical labour sourcing accreditation we recently received. The school continues to give us insights into the challenges, obviously gives us untold ideas from exactly what was shared ahead of me here today. Provided learning and reading material for a lot of our staff members, and educated us in what we needed to do and where we needed to go. So it's important to note that the journey has been one of evolution rather than revolution. It hasn't been easy. Change is very difficult for any business, and in particular the past 12 months, which leads me on to some of the specific challenges, I suppose, that we had. But first I'll go through our business case. Probably for any business of our size or who's listening here today, I think this is in no particular order. We obviously had to implement or get a business case across 8 different divisions within the group. These were very varying. So in no particular order, I think employee retention and attraction and productivity was a big area. And in order to attract and retain the best employees, we as a company needed to be at the forefront of sustainability topics. I suppose having a genuine commitment to being more sustainable provides a strong framework for staff engagement. I think with negotiated work and preferred bidder status, I think supporting clients to win work through either Section 106 support and genuinely striving to drive productivity benefits through either staff productivity or logistics value engineering solutions, gives us a real negotiated work and preferred bidder status drive. I think tender win rate, I know Penny mentioned it earlier, tender win rate increase is obviously important. I think with environmental, social and economic benefits taking an increasing share of public sector and private sector bid scoring, a strong proposition is necessary to at least sustain and ideally increase tender win rates. I think increasing client maturity in the evaluation of tenders means that lip service will start to erode scores. So a genuine approach is key for long-term success here. I think raising our reputation and profile, and also with the anticipated regulations changing through the coming years. I think a big area as well is sustainability-driven innovation. I think we've obviously had a heavy investment in innovation and especially technology. I think business will experience greater operational efficiency and better workflow and transparency in the supply chain. It has also been linked to higher productivity, better customer service and staff motivation. I'll go through more details of the innovation shortly. Sorry, I know I'm just having trouble with the slides. There's a delay. So just in terms of the challenges that we had, obviously probably the biggest challenge we had was getting total commitment across our entire business. I mentioned earlier we have 17 offices, probably 162 staff within all these regional offices. There's obviously generally, it's perceived sustainability is about greening and environmentalism, and obviously a narrow view of the impact any individual or regional office can have. So we'd kind of get rid of that view. And obviously that was one of our biggest challenges, and we'll go into further detail on how we've activated that. I think time constraints, we've obviously all lost the past 12 months with COVID. I think time, obviously, the photo there is our most precious resource. So time constraints is a big one, and try ingrain that in the regional offices. The sustainability needs to formulate parts of their daily activities, their annual briefs, their quarterly reviews is something that was a big challenge to us. I think the level and direction of the required commitment. I think having sustainability policies, procedures, and answering all PQQs at tender stage is no longer the benchmark. I think we have to move from lip service and a tick the box and policy providing to a more focused action plan that suits our individual business needs. I think obviously it's real and it's not going away, so we have to meet the challenges. It's about meeting our own needs and the business needs without compromising future generations' ability to meet theirs. I think just to go through the roadmap, our current roadmap at the moment and our action plan, I think the direction we're taking, obviously in order to get commitment from all regional offices, we got a charter signed by all regional offices for their commitment to the social value and our sustainability plan. I think we could focus really on what we could influence and control and the impact areas that were related to our business, and not try to be acting on either what our clients or the market was dictating to us. Obviously, ultimately, our business must be economically sustainable and must retain enduring profitability, and that's probably the key goal in terms of making this plan a success and implementing it throughout the group. We have to obviously benchmark on our current knowledge, obviously, and change our current knowledge into implementing this action plan. It's important, and I know Sue mentioned earlier about having a measurable, achievable and a measurable tracker in terms of your sustainability plan, which we'll go into in more detail. I think the three areas, obviously, we focus on what areas we're strong on. I think we focused on what areas we needed some improvement on, and then we had highlighted areas that we needed significant change. So this obviously led us, we kind of mirrored the UN Sustainability Development Goals, and we'll go through them in further detail. I think by relating back to the regional managers in the annual briefs and quarterly reviews, we were able to track and measure the progress. So obviously for O'Neill and Brennan, the human, social and economic pillars are our biggest impact areas and our central focus. This is obviously, we don't really have much of a huge influence on the decarbonisation side of sustainability. I think when we extracted the 17 sustainability development goals, we highlighted 10 key areas as a business that we could focus our attention on and what we could influence. I think that starts obviously with number 1, which is no poverty, and 2, zero hunger. I think a lot of these interlink and overlap. So a lot of the initiatives that we're doing kind of checks the box or influences a number of SDGs, not just one or other. So no poverty, we obviously donate to good cause as a company. All our regional offices and sites have organised food banks with their clients across different periods of the year. We've donated redundant and new IT to local schools and local businesses, and all of which make a positive impact on the local communities. I think food banks have been set up in partnership with a number of clients over Christmas, and separate regional initiatives have supported food banks. I think good health and well-being. Obviously, O'Neill and Brennan were a supporter of Mates in Mind, which is an initiative for mental health in the UK within construction. I think obviously raising awareness on mental health and the risk factors, the warning signs, and how to signpost people to treatment options. I think ultimately this indicates a genuine concern for people's health and well-being rather than lip service. I think quality education. OMB, we've obviously provided bespoke and accredited training. This obviously helps set up people at entry-level construction for success. It's enabled us to have a higher staff retention, and obviously with an impending challenge after the pre-settlement status here in July this year, it's going to be very high, and staff retention is a key, I suppose, business case in our sustainability plan. We've obviously helped us attract and support young people new into the construction industry, and overall creating a culture for people development, which creates a strong talent pipeline. I think gender equality, obviously we're looking to increase our rates of getting women into construction and at entry level and site level. I think we have a fair culture which helps attract more female staff to our business. Obviously supports our ambition to increase gender diversity within the senior staff members in the business and at site level. I think number 8, decent work and economic growth. We've obviously partnered up with a number of partners to run a constructive career course, which is obviously focused on getting young people at entry level into the construction industry and providing opportunities. We've engaged with the Kickstart scheme, which again is to do with getting young people into work from 16 to 24-year-olds. And obviously we've engaged with a lot of our clients regarding their Section 106 employment and skills plans, be it at tender stage or throughout the contract duration. I think with Within number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure, I think digitalisation has been a massive change, particularly over the past 6-7 years within our industry and within our business. We've moved from more paperless systems, we've e-timesheets, compliance registration, valuations and invoices. The whole end-to-end process within the business is more of a cloud-based paperless system. I think with innovation in terms of our logistics division, we have a full cloud-based logistics hub that obviously ties into the local communities in terms of managing deliveries with the delivery management system, and looking at waste management systems and cloud-based trackers to reduce waste recycling rates on site. I think with the procurement, in terms of procurement and mobile PO system, our whole cloud-based end-to-end process again is digitalised, and innovation and industry-leading mobile PO system implemented within the business. I think reduced inequalities, obviously all our regional offices are appropriate disabled access, which is up to compliance with legal standards. We've obviously had the ethical labour sourcing accreditation recently. I think number 11, sustainable cities and communities. I think we've engaged a lot. We have a lot of partnerships as well with the likes of TfL, the local communities and our tier 1 clients. I think Vision Zero is one initiative that's really taken off recently, which is obviously surrounded by local community training, continuous professional development. I think throughout our pre-construction engagement with clients at 106 level, we've obviously helped reducing environmental impact within the local communities. I think engaging local recruitment pools early to start recruitment and training process to ensure people are available to target site start dates. I think number 17, partnership for the goals. This is probably our strongest area within the plan. Just an example there, we've obviously collaboration with Buses for Homeless based in Acton, which obviously engages with helps getting homeless people into work, creating opportunities so they can get residencies, etc. Which is we've an example there of Aaron Peck, who's working on a 19 Elms job at Multiplex. We've helped him from homeless right to getting his own accommodation and getting his direction back on track. We've obviously engaged with Sidori, and through our partnership with Sidori and O'Neill and Brennan, we've created the Constructive Career training course, which obviously tackles the funding issue, the training issue, and gives out the employment opportunities to entry-level people. So I just want to finish up and thank you for listening. I think if anyone would like further detail on our journey, our lessons learned, or our sustainability roadmap, please feel free to get in touch.
We're going to hand over now, last but certainly not least, to Julie Saunders to talk through the project's Changing Lives at Community Wood Recycling. After we have Julie's presentation, we've got a couple of poll questions, and then hopefully we'll have time for some Q&A. So Julie, no pressure, but we'll need to try and stay to time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for having me here today. I'm delighted to be sharing the benefits that can be achieved through the construction industry working with social enterprises like ourselves at Community Wood Recycling. I'll be touching briefly on our background, our service model, but most importantly, the impact of our service within our communities. We've been working with the construction industry for over 20 years now, growing from humble beginnings back in 1998 with our founder and MD, Richard Mehmed, setting up in Brighton, and growing steadily over the years to now 30 members up and down the country, including 2 of these in Scotland and 1 in Wales. We develop, as you may be aware, great environmental results for our clients. We divert 100% of wood waste from landfill, giving our customers regular reporting on what's happened to their wood waste after it's left their site. This is the environmental impact. But through doing this, we're saving resources and changing lives with Community Wood Recycling. Very briefly, just in case you don't know how we work, we're an alternative to a traditional wood skip, but instead of leaving a skip for our clients, we ask that they segregate wood waste in a wood bay area where our team will come and collect in a caged transit vehicle. It will then be taken back by our operatives, sorted and prepared at the yard. Larger pieces of wood will be sold for retail, smaller pieces made into products. leftover pieces being cut up into firewood, and anything that can't be reused being recycled as wood chip. All this gives disadvantaged people the chance to discover, develop skills. Our service model is based on three things, really. It's saving void space, creating jobs, and being the best environmental solution for wood waste. Everything we do, importantly, is labour intensive. It's this work that allows us to demonstrate the other value that we really pride ourselves on at community wood recycling, which is the difference that can be made to people's lives, social impact that's created through working with us. Our USP, I guess, at community wood recycling is that we reuse as much of the wood as possible. This process, as I mentioned, is labour intensive, and that's what creates the work for a wide range of people in our local communities, people who might have otherwise been marginalised in the workplace. And this is in communities all over the UK. There are people who come to us through drug and alcohol problems, people with learning disabilities, people with mental health problems, long-term unemployed, ex-offenders. But by coming to work with us at Community Wood Recycling, they can begin to build some routine back into their lives and gain valuable skills. Skills that they're able to hone in on and develop. We've got an in-house 12-module training scheme that they can go through. Within this, they're able to find their individual skills, whether it's going out on collections themselves, doing the hand loading, learning how to sort the wood with what can be turned into products, what can be resold. They can learn and develop carpentry skills in our workshops, or the logistics of running the collections, managing the yard, the list goes on. Really, they're all invaluable skills that can be learnt there, that they can take with them to move on to more permanent employment, which quite often means that we lose our great team members, but that's always a positive thing, because that frees up space for more to come through our doors when needed. So people in our local communities, really, you might not have been given an opportunity previously, they're able to thrive on this, really, improving their prospects, improving the quality of their life. Which brings me to Steve, who came to our Basildon enterprise, New Life Wood, a couple of years ago. An adult in recovery for alcohol abuse. Steve realised he needed to do something to change his life around, and started working with us. And working with us at Community Wood Recycling has really given him a sense of purpose, enabling him to feel valued and important again in his life. I'm going to cut to a quick video of Steve putting it far better in his own words. That's okay.
I had just come out of rehab for a long-term problem with alcohol, and found I had lots and lots of time on my hand, and decided to come down here to do initially a bit of volunteer mentoring, and it kind of increased from there. Like most of the guys here, we do pretty much of anything. My initial role here was as a volunteer mentor. I then got into working into the workshop, which I thoroughly enjoy, and so it's pretty much anything: paintings, breaking up pallets, whatever needs doing, really. It's made my life worth living again. It's having something to work towards. It's a huge thing in my life now, the project. It's some reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention that Steve mentioned how much he enjoys now mentoring others, making a difference in their lives. People who have experienced a similar journey to his. And just really briefly, again, another example of a life that's been changed is Sam, who came to our Birmingham-based enterprise, Jericho Woodshack. He came to us as I've just the script up on here for you, but he had poor mental health, absolutely no experience of working in woodwork before, and initially he came to us for just some kind of routine in his life, begin socialising again, and he's now become a core part of the team there, and has developed skills. Not only his confidence has grown, but his woodworking skills. He has made these lovely, he made a huge range of bird boxes and bee houses, one of which he's proudly holding here. His manager Lucy, this is the thing that the bit where the lives are really changed, as well as the great environmental outcomes, is that he's been able to provide Sam with space to just get lost in his work, to find out what he can do, and the improvements in his confidence and resilience to get through things after making mistakes is as Lucy, his supervisor, says, phenomenal, which is, you know, and there's Sam's up and down the country, all over, that are working with various enterprises of ours. And this little bit of difference that it makes in their lives, and the thing that they can take forward into future work is, you know, is here to see. As I mentioned, we've got 30 enterprises across the UK. Here's some of them here, from Glasgow, Wolverhampton, Preston, Hull, Derby, then London. We're right down in the south coast in Brighton, over in Kent, down to the West Country, pretty much the whole of the UK covered for the construction industry. And 229 paid jobs and 843 training opportunities were provided in the last financial year, making us really proud of our labour-intensive model, I guess. Works created whilst developing confidence and self-esteem, self-worth for people when they really need it the most. They can be part of the busy retail shops that we have at each of the enterprises, dealing with the public, or making beautiful products from the recycled wood for sale to the public, one-off bespoke items created for shops, for banks, and perhaps a really lovely example of something that we did with BAM Construction, which is a really great example of the full sort of circular economy of it, which is one of our enterprises building a lovely outdoor classroom for a school at Blessed Sacrament School. Again, it's giving people opportunities to go and work out in the community and see the difference that they're making, not just socially, but obviously environmentally as well. All of the wood was made from 100% recycled wood that we've taken ourselves from construction sites. So, so that's great. So yeah, really just sort of finish. I just wanted to say that working with social enterprises like ourselves here at Community Wood Recycling not only has a great environmental impact that we can report on for you, but it also has an equally important social impact that should be and can be measured. As you can see, last year we rescued 22,767 tonnes of wood waste from landfill. And in doing that, we created 229 jobs and 843 training opportunities for people, which is far more than would have been created in the traditional wood skip and chipping process to collect this amount of wood. So I guess to finish, I just want to really let you know that social enterprises really can be used as a competitive and realistic alternative, not just environmental impact outcomes for you, but also with very measurable social impact outcomes as well. And that's about it from me. Thank you very much for listening, and do check us out on our website, or get involved with us. Give us a ring if you're interested in doing anything with community wood recycling. Thank you very much.
Julie, thank you so much. I think the chat box certainly speaks to, for your presentation. There's been some very warm, glowing reviews and a lot of interest. So do please follow up with Julie after the event. Right, turning now quickly to 3 poll questions. And these are free text polls. So please get ready to populate your Mentimeter fields accordingly. I'm just waiting for the question. So question 1, what do you think you have to offer which can really make a difference to communities and enhance people's lives? Excellent. So we've got a couple of responses coming through relating to volunteering, opportunities, employment opportunities and advice, use of more social enterprises, time and experience, bespoke social value projects. I think that's a really interesting one. Yep, and then fundraising, lots of work experience, lots valuing time. Advice, training, mentorship. Brilliant. Okay, so turning to the second question now, which social value activities would you like to do more of as an organisation? So just drawing perhaps on what you've just heard from Julie and all our other speakers. John, for example, aligning social value to the Sustainable Development Goals. Great, so again, we've got more volunteering, supply chain engagement, which is interesting. Broadening out that community involvement. Yeah, more in supply chain diversity. Last couple of seconds, and then we're going to move on to the next question. Working with SMEs, social enterprises, long-term unemployed, deprived communities, brilliant. Okay, and finally, what support could main contractors give you which would genuinely help you to have a greater impact of the community, environment and the local economy? This speaks to a couple of the questions that have been coming through on the chat box, actually. Alex, just seen your question in the chat box about sharing the results of the Menti poll. I'm sure that's something that we can do. Brilliant. Help with CO2 tracking, connect with other stakeholders, budgeting help, financial support and guidance. Yeah. Values over price. Again, real value here over in the networking. And knowledge sharing to avoid duplication of effort. Brilliant, and greater transparency. Super. Okay. Well, I mean, we could really unpack that result there, but we sadly we don't have time. So I think what we'll do now is we'll just turn to some Q&A. Now, I'm not given the instability of my internet, I'm not going to pose questions to specific speakers per se, but I think what would be great, first of all, is it was a question that came up quite early on in the piece from Andrew in the chat box about how can suppliers, and Andrew framed this through the lens of manufacturing suppliers, collaborate on social value issues and stakeholders when very often the discussions don't necessarily include suppliers. So I think it would be great to hear the client perspective and the supplier perspective. So perhaps just one of you, perhaps Penny or Sue, you might want to take the client perspective and then leave some room for the suppliers.
Thanks, Claire. I think that very question is the reason we're here, for me personally, because I have tried to have this conversation with suppliers, and it's been a great conversation, but it's not led to where I'd want it to lead, and that's what got me thinking, actually, maybe as an industry we need to get better at having that conversation. So I would absolutely welcome, taking this event forward into some kind of activity, some kind of workshops or something where we can really delve into that question a bit more and really kind of understand how we can have that conversation, how we can make that conversation a better conversation across the board with suppliers and contractors and clients as well.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I think that the important part of the conversation of the question there really is that you should be part of the conversation, and I'd echo what Penny's saying, really keen to make sure that you are part of the conversation going forward and to look at what we can do to understand what barriers may be in place, or what sort of things may be challenging for different types of organizations, but to make sure that we are understanding what contribution you can make and both encouraging you and supporting you in being able to do that. So yeah, keen to be involved in in those sorts of conversations as well going forward.
Brilliant. Thanks both of you. And just, I think that really ties into another comment that came through in the chat box about the potential for client mandate to be quite restrictive when suppliers are approaching it. So we often talk about beneficiaries being local, for example, and so we get tied into sort of specific groups or specific postcodes, and that can in some ways limit, if you like, the overall really brilliant impacts that a supplier may otherwise have. So I think that's interesting. And there may be a piece of work after this for all school members or prospective members to take the UKGBC framework, which really aims to break down the barriers, but drive the conversation through the asset life cycle, as Sophia said. I think I'm just going to leave it with finish with one more question. Looking at how can suppliers go about finding the right social enterprises for them? So obviously we've heard from Julie about the very tangible impacts that social enterprises can have, and I think what the beauty of it is that it helps clients, it helps us as an industry to really start to focus on outcomes rather than inputs and outputs, which is where the social value conversation originally started some years ago. So beyond the networks that exist, I mean, obviously community wood recycling seems to have a very strong fan base on this call, appropriately so. But for those looking for other opportunities, where should suppliers look?
Do you want to take this, Sue, since it's a social enterprise focused question?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I was just unmuting. I would say that there's obviously Social Enterprise UK have a database on their website. When the Scape database is launched, then that will provide an opportunity. I think also, if you want to talk to some of the main contractors about which social enterprises we're using as well, that might be another route. Or you can unearth quite a few by Googling social enterprise. It's worth being aware that there are different as Alison mentioned, so different criteria, if you like, for how a social enterprise is defined. We align with the government and SEUK, Social Enterprise UK definition of social enterprises being sort of putting more than 50% of their profits back in, and so there's elements around making sure that the governance is sort of really clear on their social mission and that sort of thing. But you can find a few supply chains as well. Rachel's put in the chat. So there are organisations that are popping up to support organisations to find social enterprises. Construction Line that we use are flagging those in their supply chain platform, so that buyers rather can identify social enterprises within their platform when they're looking for supply chain. So there are lots of different routes to find some. I would say think about the categories where you may be able to substitute in a social enterprise if you're not using one already, and then maybe focus on a couple of categories and look for social enterprises in those areas.
Claire, can I just pick up on a comment that you made a second ago before posing that question, which was around sometimes client requirements can be restrictive. I think the beauty of the conversation we're having now around working with suppliers is that actually, if we don't want to, we don't have to kind of categorize suppliers in with the kind of targets that we have from clients. We have the opportunity to be quite creative right now. And think about, well, what have you got as an organisation, as a supplier? What can you do, and what do you want to do, and how can we work together to sort of make that happen and make it something meaningful through the projects that we're working on. And I think some of the best projects that any contractor can work on is one where the client is driven to include social value, but isn't over prescriptive about what you need to do. You know, they kind of give you the principles that they want you to work with, and they introduce you to organisations that they are important to them. But they kind of let you kind of use your imagination to sort of bring something different to what they would normally do. And that's what we've got here. You know, although some of the work that we will do with suppliers will benefit some of the targets that we already have, we're not bound by them. You know, there's an opportunity to think a bit creatively, I would say.
Thank you, Penny. I completely agree. I think this is, as you say, the beauty of this conversation, and I think we're starting to see a slightly more permissive approach to social value rather than prescriptive, which I think is a nice way to close. I know that we could keep going with our Q&A, but we would like to finish at 11:30. So on that note, I'm going to hand over now to EJ, who will talk through the Supply Chain Sustainability School's offering and how it can really help us move the action alongside this conversation that we're having.
Hi, morning folks. Thanks, Claire. So I've got 5 minutes just to whiz through, I suppose, ultimately, how can the school help you with all of these challenges and discussions that we've talked about this morning. Okay. So first of all, as a quick reminder, all of the school events, CPD training, resources, etc., they're all completely free for you to access and use. And the reason they're free is because we have 118 partners, a combination of clients, contractors, home builders, FM service providers and suppliers who all part fund the school and actively recommend the school as the go-to sustainability resource for their supply chain and for their colleagues as well. So hopefully you're familiar with the school in terms of how you can find resources, but just in case, if you're on the school webpage, you just go to the Learn section. Once you're in there, you can search for resources by keywords, so social value, training and skills, ethical business, whatever it may be. And you can also search using different filters. So they're kind of halfway down. You can see you can search by competency, so beginner right through to advanced. Topic and subtopic, so that's things like it could be air quality, circular economy, social value. And then you've got markets, so if you're only looking for resources that are specific to the homes market or construction market, probably not the case so much with regard to social value, but you can do that. You can also search by format, so whether it's e-learning or videos, or if you don't like watching videos, there's you can search by toolkits or publications. And then we've introduced a star rating as well, so you can look up resources that have just been rated the kind of the 5 out of 5 stars. So social value encompasses such a range of topics, as we've talked about many of them this morning, mainly more about this kind of social side of things, but to give you a flavour of what we've got to help, and we've got some resources here. So on the top left there, you've got the one, it's a case study. It's a really interesting case study, and it looks at circular economy, it looks at training and skills, it looks at energy and carbon, and it's a case study of Balfour Beatty Economy working in partnership with HMP Foston Hall, and it looks at how they've worked together to deliver over, I think it's about £34,000 worth of social value, and it looks at how they've engaged prisoners and given them a chance to earn and learn. You've got the Uk Gbc Framework, we've heard a lot about today. We've got 2 case studies there, Reading from the Start with Vinci, and a video on how to support local people to get into construction. And then we've got 2 publications that are school publications we've developed in partnership with our partners. The social value in the built environment, what that does, it encapsulates various different approaches of our wide-ranging school partners, and it's really useful for kind of handy tips, hints and case studies on how everybody's tackling social value. We've got the wellbeing in the built environment as well, which links very closely to this agenda, so I'd urge you to have a look at those. Designers, there's a key role for designers to play in delivering social value. So we did some work with REBA a few years ago on social value and design of the built environment. The top there in the middle, we've got a couple of sustainability shorts. So those are short 2 to 5 minute videos or animations. They're designed for people predominantly on site. So for example, the one on air quality is, well, what's the issue around air quality? Why is it such a topical, you know, what's important and what are the health implications and what can people on site actually do to help address that? We've got the material exchange mapping platform. One of the things that does is it helps many of our partners who may have a project in a specific region and they may have excess materials. So it tries to match them up with any community organisations that may benefit from those excess materials. Along the bottom there, we've got recordings of previous social value webinars that we've run. We've got one particularly on monetisation. We haven't really had a chance to touch on that today. We've heard about PPN06 very briefly. So there's a lunch and learn coming up all about that for those of you who want to understand more about that. Learning pathways are something that launched fairly recently. What they are is they're, I suppose, a tailored learning pathway features a curriculum of activity, so resources to be completed. And once you've completed them, you actually get a badge and that stays on your dashboard and you can share that badge with your customers or colleagues. An example, we've got one here at the top there, social value defining and delivering. So I think that's kind of aimed at a level 2, so aimed at those people who've got some knowledge of social value. And this is an example of what the pathway includes. I think it's 10 resources in total, but you can see 5 of them there. So you can see you've got the title of the resource, you can see what type of resource it is, whether it's e-learning or a video or a document, shows you the level it's aimed at, and also most importantly how long it's going to take you to do that. And hot off the press, I believe that there's another learning pathway that has launched today, which is the, I suppose, level 1 that sits beneath this. That's what is social value and why is it important? So again, I'd urge you to have a look at those. These learning pathways are quite exciting because what they enable you to do is use the school as a learning management system to upskill your own colleagues. So through your dashboard within the school, you can click on learning pathways and you can allocate different learning pathways to your colleagues, and you can set a completion date and time and a badge, and you can go on and monitor when they've done that. And that's the kind of thing that some of your customers may be really interested to hear about in terms of how you're upskilling your own teams on social value. And I think that's taken me to the end. Dead on half. Oh no, sorry, one more. Don't forget we've got more training and events coming up. Clearly you know about them because you were here today, but we've got lots of really packed agenda, pretty much something every day. So you've got things coming up on carbon, on sustainability strategy, on micro behaviours and fairness, inclusion, respect. We've got the PPN06 webinar coming up, but yes, please do have a look at all of those. And that really is the last from me. So Claire, back over to you.
Thanks, EJ. It's brilliant, and it really shows the breadth of the school's ability to help with this. Please, everybody, do share your feedback on the session. We find it really valuable, and it helps us to frame our forthcoming sessions as well. Huge thanks to all of our speakers and your insights. I know that they've been deeply appreciated. We've seen a lot of very positive commentary in the chat box. And this is very much an open invitation to please keep the conversation going. You can contact us at the details on the slide, info@actionsustainabilityschool.co.uk, and all of the information that EJ just spoke about is available on the website supplychainschool.co.uk. So thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.